Hello and welcome to the Oxygen Addict Triathlon Podcast. We're brought to you every week by our sponsors, PrecisionHydration.com.
Precision Hydration offer electrolyte drinks in different strengths to match how you sweat. Personalise your hydration strategy today at precisionhydration.com and get a free box or tube of pH worth up to $9.99 using the code OxygenAddict.
We're also brought to you by foodcell.co.uk.
The next generation of top tube nutritional carriers for your bike, designed to allow endurance triathletes and cyclists to carry enough food and gels while allowing easy access. Use the code FREEPOST for free delivery worldwide. Check it out at foodcell.co.uk.
And we're also brought to you by Tribe.
Natural sports nutrition delivered direct to you. You can try a trial pack of 6 delicious energy bars, protein bars and protein shakes for just £1, including post and packaging. Head to wearetribe.co/Oxygen Addict and use the code TRIBEOxygenAddict.
And hello and welcome to the show. We've got a very special edition today. Hells, tell us all about it, please.
Well, Rob, it's that time of the year when we really are gearing up to, the duathlons are there are a few more duathlons, but it is going to soon be pool triathlons and getting out there into the
race season, won't it?
Of race season here in the UK. So a lot of us will have spent a lot of time on the turbo trainer over winter. We'll have probably spent a bit of time in the dark running around a track. We've been doing laps up and down the pool. So we've been doing plenty of swim, bike, run, probably a bit of strength and conditioning work. But have you actually done any work on the mental side of things? I don't know. I don't think I'd be alone saying I haven't done a whole load. Have you done much, Rob?
It's one of those things, isn't it, that almost happens by proxy. And I think some people are very aware that their mental side is getting trained and other people are not aware at all. And some people's mental side is not getting trained in the slightest. So I think the vast majority of people will probably not be sitting there thinking, now I'm going to focus on training my mind. I think you're dead right.
It's the kind of thing sometimes which if there's a big race coming up and you sort of start to feel nervous about it, then that's perhaps when you start to think, okay, what can I do to try to calm down these nerves a little bit? And maybe you do start to do a bit of visualization. But really, for me, it's only when I have an actual race coming up. I tend not to think about it during the week. Okay, maybe if you've got a hard session, you might think, okay, how can I get through this? But yeah, I am not the best at training my brain. But we're going to hopefully help you a little bit this week because we have Evie Serventi on the podcast. So Evie she'll introduce herself in shortly, but she's a sports psychologist and it's really good. So we cover lots of different questions that you have asked in the Facebook group. Loads of tips on dealing with pre-race nerves. What do you do in the middle of a race if you've had a bad swim or a bad bike and how you can really refocus your mind. And then, Rob, there's a common feeling. I used to get this a heck of a lot. It's that sort of feeling of guilt if you miss a training session, or equally, there's that guilty feeling if you think that you haven't spent enough time with your family. So it's sort of like that balance, isn't it? And she also talks a bit about coming to terms with an injury, which, most of us have been there, and you can get so down with it. And then dealing with post-race blues as well. Again, if you've got like a really massive sort of bucket list race, and then suddenly your life feels pretty empty without it.
Well, it sounds great, Hells. Let's cue it up, shall we? Let's see what she's got to say.
Evie Serventi, hello and welcome back to the Oxygen Addict Triathlon Podcast. First of all, how are you?
Yeah, I'm really well, thanks. Really well. Yeah, how are you?
Yeah. I'm good. So, Evie, for those that don't know you, you are a sports psychologist. Tell us a little bit about your background, and then the way that we're going to sort of do this interview is going to be that we've got lots of questions from listeners, so we're going to go through those, and hopefully you're going to help everybody to train their brain ahead of this season.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to the structure of this. I really like how you've asked for the questions and you've sent them to me. I've had a little bit of time to get to know some of the people as well through Oxygenatics. So thanks everybody for your contributions. So in a nutshell, I'm a sport and exercise psychologist finishing my accreditation with the British Psychological Society. That happens in June, so I'm very excited about that. That's the final stamp, icing on the cake, get that accreditation. And I'm Australian. I've been here for 10 years. I'm a sports journalist and editor as well, and transitioned into sports psychology about 6 years ago through purely my interest in the brain and the mental side of training, and just how, you push yourself physically so hard, focus on that physical side of training, and then you get to the start of a race and almost it's not irrelevant, but I realised that the brain has a huge amount of influence on how that race plays out. So that sparked my interest in sports psychology, and now I work with all sorts of different sports. Triathlon is my sport, as it is yours, Helen. I love to dabble in a bit of a swim, bike and a run. And so I often work with runners and triathletes and swimmers, but with a wide variety of sports, because often the skills that we talk about in sports psychology, are transferable. They're individual for everybody, but they are completely transferable between sports. So that's good news too.
So why don't we kick off then with the questions? So this is a good one, and I don't think that I think a lot of people will will relate to this. So Heidi Marie says, pre-race nerves. I suffer from anxiety and try to manage it, but I find pre-race day it takes over and drains me so much that it affects my performance.
Yeah. Heidi, the first thing I'd say to you is not relax, obviously, because that doesn't help, but the fact that nerves are normal, to acknowledge that they're not anything to fear. They don't make you feel very comfortable, but equally they're natural. When there's something to win or lose, something at stake, your emotions start to go up. You start to think about what I've got to lose, what I've got to gain, and so it's completely normal. The way you approach your nerves or relate to your nerves is the thing that we help you work on. So the first thing I would suggest is breathing. Have you got a breathing routine that you follow? Because when you're breathing in and out, your body it's very hard for your muscles to not relax. So there's some simple breathing routines. And Helen, I don't know whether you'll have show notes, but I can always send you some notes and slides and things. And
do.
For the community, because it's very simple. Breathe in 4 breaths, breathe out 4 breaths. And if you do that when you're starting to feel physiologically nervous, so sweating, heart racing, breathless, tightness in the chest, it can really help you. So, and also mentally, if the thoughts start to play havoc in your head, start to do your breathing routine, and that can really ground you and keep you focused in the moment. Another technique I would suggest for you, Heidi, is to look at your what we call signature strengths. So almost have a diagram like a mind map, have you in the middle, Heidi, and then put little arrows going out all around you, and then write down all of your strengths, physical, psychological, personality-wise, that you feel you've got. And if you feel you're struggling to come up with those, some strengths that other people have described you as having, commitment, humorous, determination, resilience, focused, throughout your whole life. It doesn't matter when, but if you write them down and you focus on reinforcing those strengths, it can help you build confidence and help you feel calm. And the other thing I would suggest is to focus on everything that you know is certain about what's going to happen tomorrow, because the nerves relate to a lot of uncertainty. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You've spent so much time preparing and being certain about the training that you're doing that it all hinges on this event that's happening tomorrow, which you don't have any real certainty about. So you know that you've been training, you know that you can have your kit ready, you know that you can have your nutrition and your hydration sorted. So focus on preparing the things that you can actually manage and control, because they will again help you feel confident, because you know that there's certainty about those things. So does that make sense, Helen?
Oh yeah, massively. And And I was thinking back to it must have been ahead of the first Ironman that I did, and I think about, I don't know, definitely 2 weeks out, I just felt so nervous.
Yeah, what was it for you that you were thinking of that sparked the nerves?
Probably fear of failure, so which goes back to the unknown, really, doesn't it? But I think fear of failure, fear of not finishing, fear of, I don't know, probably having a puncture on the bike, etc., etc.
Which you can't control. And that's Heidi goes on to mention that, doesn't she? You know, feeling, going out of her comfort zone and trying to stay in that comfort zone because she fears that failure. That's a common thought and emotion that athletes have around racing. And I ask you, is it what are you failing at? So if you don't finish a race, you know, the DNF, what does DNF stand for?
That, I think everyone will have different answers, but for me, DNF would be, I have failed. I'd probably go really dramatic and say, well, I've completely wasted the last, 9 months of training or a year of training.
I'm gonna slap you. Figuratively. Yeah, DNF did not finish. You haven't finished the journey. It's not a failure. It's failure of what? It's failed to, achieve the outcome that you were working towards achieving. But in all of those 9 months of training, you've achieved every single day. So again, keeping a training diary, we just talked about that, it's a really good idea because it provides the evidence for your progress and for your achievements. Whatever happens during the race, at the end of the race, nothing can take away what you have achieved to get there. And a lot of people skim over that part. And often for people that understand or have worked really hard to manage their perceptions of failure, they often get to the start of a race feeling, it sounds cheesy, but they've won. To even get there uninjured or having managed an injury and got over a cold or managed commitments to family, they've won and they've done the training. So the outcome of the race is always the icing on the cake. And when everything goes well, you can enjoy that reward of that sense of achievement. If it doesn't happen, just haven't finished it. You can always learn the training that you've done and you've banked it. So that's, I think, Heidi's second question, how to push yourself. I think practicing a bit of that self-compassion and encouragement in the race. You don't have to push yourself a lot, just incrementally. Come on, you can do it. One more telegraph. Go to the next person, or just go for another minute. Just run for another minute. Break it right down. And often you push yourself in the training, and you want to enjoy the race. I think failure is a huge one. I think we're pretty hard on ourselves as athletes, no matter what level. Have you ever DNF'd or DNS'd?
The only time for me that I DNF'd or just had a bit of a nightmare in a race was an injury, and it was a 5K race. But I think, being stupid, I decided to walk across the line anyway. But that was it. So really, I did finish, but obviously I completely and utterly I injured. It was a sort of a ping moment. So, but that's it really. So yeah, it wasn't difficult for me to decide to actually stop at the time, but it was harder in the weeks after it to deal with the, that mental side of being injured.
Just going to interrupt now to say a quick word for our sponsors, precisionhydration.com. You can go online and take that online sweat test at precisionhydration.com. That'll give you a really good lead as to whether you are a particularly heavy sweater or particularly salty sweater. And if you are, you can even go visit them in person and have the in-person sweat test done. Now, that being said, you don't need to do that. The key thing with Precision Hydration is they have electrolyte salts and tablets that come in different strengths, which means if it turns out you are a very salty sweater, like me, for example, you can choose one of their 1000 milligram or even 1500 milligram sachets. You mix it in with your drink. It's completely tasteless, so it's not like the old school drinks that used to be really, really salty, but they're really great at taking care of your need for sodium. That means if you're struggling with cramps, this could be a very good solution for that. Or even if you're struggling with feeling really sick or ill at the end of long races or hard races in the heat, it's very possible that sodium is the missing part of your performance. So go over and check them out at precisionhydration.com. Remember, you can get a free trial box or tube of pH worth up to $9.99 using the code OxygenAddict.
Anna Watkinson Powell, actually, talking of injury, she says, how can you cope with injury? You know, you lose that endorphin rush, you feel guilty, you feel lazy, you're tempted to overdo it too soon. And then a good point as well, you get jealous of friends and teammates who are out training.
Yeah, gosh, it's so hard. I remember my husband, he's also a triathlete or runner, and which can be good and bad. And for that reason, you know, I had a period of 4 years where I was not running, had foot problems. And so that was a really great opportunity for me to get to grips with how to manage an injury and the mental side of it. Because I simply had to, like you, Helen, you know, when your body tells you to stop, you have to. And my husband would go out for a run, almost sneak out, and I'd have rage. I'd be, you know, my emotions would be boiling, and I'd watch resentfully as he'd go out and come back, and then I'd quiz him on how far he went. But I was really struggling with the injury. I think it's the Kubler-Ross model. There's the 7 stages that you can go through with grief, and an injury is like experiencing grief. It's a loss of often a huge part of something that you feel helps to identify you, and that's how a lot of people do struggle. There's this sense of it becomes almost an intro out of your sport. So when that is stopped temporarily or otherwise, it's a huge adjustment. So there's that shock and disbelief, and you know, sometimes denial, and then you have the guilt, as Anna says, feeling guilty for not doing anything or going out, the lack of endorphins, and your hormones are all adjusting again. You can go through a sort of series of being very down or lonely or depressed. Then you reflect on, you know, your sport and what you had and now what you don't have. And then you go through it, and you get to a sort of reconstruction stage, and then there's the acceptance of what's happened, and simply bringing some goals in to start rebuilding yourself. And even if you can't partake in your sport, rehab is the key. So creating some very small process goals around your rehab, even down to getting the kit out that you wear, that you're comfortable in. Gives you that sense of identity with your sport, and do your rehab. Find a time in the day where you can do it, and if you're able to, because with injury now, there's a lot of research around active recovery. So you don't just sit around and not do anything. Again, depending on the severity of your injury. But if you can't run, sometimes you can get on the turbo, or sometimes you can swim. When I couldn't run because of feet and leg problems, I started doing yoga. And, you know, Helen, we've talked about yoga and how important that is for strength and conditioning. And that's a key part of my training now, and that came through injury. So there are always other ways, other types of sport or bits of sport that you can perhaps do. And you know, the friends that you have who go off and do their sport, contact them and say, look, can we go for a walk, or can we go and have a coffee, or still be around them? And often friends will want to be there for you. They just don't know what to say or do. So, you know, reaching out to them is a good idea, I would suggest.
Injuries always suck. So it's good to have some tips as well. Another common theme that came up, and this one's from Peter Cannon, is about how to cope with stress. So I think this is so common amongst age groupers. You know, when you're training, you are feeling that you should be spending more time with your family, but then when you're with your family, you're thinking about the training that you should be doing. And so Peter suggests, it really you're not committing 100% to either activity. And I think James Dyson as well sort of picks on that about letting your family down, or not seeing them if you're doing too much training, letting yourself down. So yeah, what do you think about that?
Oh, Peter, I really like this question, and it's a common dilemma. How to commit to one task completely and fully. And I think the short of the long answer is you often can't. So I would advise you to break it right down. And the first thing to do is communicate with the people involved. Get the family on side and say, look, I want to make this work. I really want to be able to spend time with you guys. I want to be able to spend time training. What's the best on the weekend? When is the best time for us to spend it together? And it might be a case of having to cut back on the amount of time so that you're more present in that moment, rather than spending, 2-3 hours with the family on Saturday morning. Say, right, I'm going to get up, go and do my training for an hour and a half, and then I'm going to fully commit to you guys for an hour and a half. Put the phone away. Don't look at anything, and be really present. It's almost a quality over quantity. Rather than just being there, but not being there mentally, actually just, being brave to say, well, let's make the amount of time shorter, but I'm actually going to be present and in the moment. And that way you can then dedicate yourself to that training and to your family. So get them on side, talk to them, try to help. If you need their help with trying to find a solution, get their help. You need support. I think your social network is a huge part of your success with your training and your sport. It's huge. And rather than make them separate, because they're obviously separate, training is separate to being with family. If you get the family involved on the decision making, they'll feel they're more part of it, and that will help you feel mentally and emotionally better. So is that clear? I think so.
Yeah. I think and it's sort of being very, very clear in your head about that time and about your use of time.
How much time do you actually need? Can you just shave off the time to make it more quality, and be really conscious of distractions, both when you're training and when you're with your family and at work. There's an element of you not being able to completely compartmentalize everything and switch off, and that's okay as well. But if you feel like you're dedicating yourself fully to your training and getting a lot out of that session, that will help you feel calmer and more motivated to then go and spend time with the family, which you'll then also fully commit to. So it's a hard one.
One of the most common themes is often guilt, isn't it? And it is finding that balance, and because I sometimes think that it is quite it can be a really selfish sport. As amazing as it is, it can be very, very selfish. And if you're sort of always beating yourself up about that, then it's difficult to get your head in the right space.
Yeah, it is. It is. And when the guilt that people feel is valid, and I think it's a good idea, if there is this sense of guilt, to actually go back, to take a step back and think about what really matters to you in life, what's important in life. And this is something that I would recommend everybody do. Sit down, get a piece of paper or your training diary and write down what matters to me in life. So it's almost like your values. What sort of person do I want to be? Because when you reinforce what that is, so what is your real motivation for doing what you're doing, about wanting to be healthy, wanting to fulfill your potential, wanting to be a reliable, healthy, caring parent, partner, all of those things that are really important to you often link back to why you're even doing your sport. And it can help alleviate that sense of guilt, because actually what you're doing by training is working towards living by your values and living towards what matters to you. And when people connect those dots a bit more, it often lessens this perception of guilt that they feel. Because actually,
this is amazing.
Well, you want to live, you're doing something good for you, and you're doing something good for your family. It's selfish in a sense. It's selfless in a sense.
Just going to interrupt here for a word from our sponsors, Tribe. Tribe make really delicious natural sports nutrition. They've got energy bars, protein and protein shakes. They're 100% natural, the gluten-free, the dairy-free, and the vegan. They've got a source of protein, slow-release carbs, high fiber, and minerals to support energy. Really, really delicious tasting energy products here. I can't recommend them highly enough. If you go over to wearetribe.co/oxygen addict, for just £1, you can get a trial pack of 6 of their delicious energy bars, or protein shakes. You can choose which ones you get, and you get them for just £1, including postage and packaging. Use the code TRIBEOxygenAddict at checkout. I tell you, it's an absolute no-brainer. The guys who started the company, Rob, Tom and Guy, are ultra runners themselves, and they really were frustrated with the synthetic sports nutrition that was out there. So they designed their own stuff, and then they've got a company selling it. Really, really cool guys as well. The Tribe Freedom Foundation's had over 20,000 athletes take part in its community running events, and they've raised over 200k to fight human trafficking. So get over and check it out at wearetribe.co/oxygen addict and use the code TRIBEOxygenAddict to get 6 samples for just £1, including postage and packaging.
What about when you are midway through a race? I think this is quite a couple of questions relating to this. So let's start with if you have let's start at the very beginning. Stuart Hall says, how do you stop the fear of the open water swim? And I think that's quite a common question.
Oh, yeah. I read an article about this a couple of weeks ago, actually. And I'm just thinking back to an experience I had, I think 2 years ago. I'm a pretty good swimmer, coming from a country where you basically grow up in the water.
Cheating, yeah.
And, moved to the UK and loved open water, that sense of freedom and being outdoors and being in a lake. Just nothing can take away from that. However, one year I just had this brain melt and for whatever reason. And I figured it out in the end, but again, just panicked. And there's another question too, where lady says she, when faced with a choppy sea swim, she began hyperventilating and clung to a canoe. And I related to that a lot. I did that probably for a whole season. Every single race, just panicked and had to flag down the kayak.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm a competent swimmer. And
so how did you get over it?
Well, first thing I did was a practical thing. I looked at, why am I tense? So it was my wetsuit. My wetsuit, the chest it had always been quite snug, and whether I had grown more muscle or I don't think they shrink, but I just felt that it was a lot tighter than it needed to be. And so I changed my wetsuit, and straight away that made a difference, and whether that's placebo or not. So the first thing I'd say is just check the equipment and the kit that you're using, your wetsuit, because they do need to fit properly. And sometimes people, if they don't have a frame of reference to go by with a wetsuit, they don't know whether it's comfortable. They just know what they know, how it feels. And then the next thing I would do would be, again, go back to a breathing routine, because particularly in cold water, if you breathe out, your muscles can't contract. They have to fight to contract, to constrict. So before you get in the water, stand there quietly, close your eyes, and breathe in very slowly 4 times through your nose and out through your mouth, and really feel your diaphragm working and feel the breath relaxing your muscles and calming you. And another thing I do while I'm breathing is to visualize all the swimming you've done, or a really good swim that you've had in a pool or in the open water, as a really positive experience, which can help you emulate the emotions from that experience into this present moment. It is tough. And the more you fear, the more you think about that open water, the worse it feels. Again, go back to the certainties. And, okay, I've done the training. I've been practicing open water. And another thing I would do is focus on one specific goal, if you like, for your open swim, whether it be a race or just a session, think about your breathing, focus on your breathing, or focus on your position in the water. So I'm going to get in and do some deep breathing and take my time to adjust to the temperature. And then I'm going to swim over on the left-hand side or the right-hand side. So pick a specific target or goal and focus purely on that. And then that will help you stay task focused and stop your brain from, running away with all the uncertainties of what's ahead.
And this follows on nicely. Let's say you have a bad swim or you get a puncture on the bike. Ian Pearce says, how do you refocus for the rest of your race?
Yeah. Well, I had to do that with the swims, and it's the first thing you do. So you get out and actually the first thing, Ian, I'd suggest is to accept that that's racing. A top elite athlete said this to me the other day. I was talking to him about the same thing. What happens when, you swim in the wrong direction, or you swim on the outside of a buoy, or you get kicked in the face, or you get a flat on the bike? And he said, accept it's part of racing is what happens. And I thought, you know what, that's true. It's part of our sport. So you've got to take the whole sport, not just the good bits. And obviously in the moment when that's happening, it's frustrating. I would reset. So again, have a goal, specific goal for the bike, have a specific goal for the swim, have a specific goal for the run. So if you've had a bad swim and you've recomposed yourself and you've got out, you've got to almost, as you're taking off that wetsuit, shed that section of the race in your mind. It's done, draw a line under it. Now you go, get on that bike, bring back the training you've done, focus on the evidence, and bring back one goal that you want to achieve in that bike, maintaining my pace or maintaining my nutrition every 20, 30 minutes. There's always one thing that you can focus on that will help you feel a little bit calmer and that sense of confidence as you achieve it. You feel that confidence and that sense of progress as you're going through the race. But I think a sense of acceptance is a huge part of it. It's part of the sport. And as frustrating as those things can be, I mean, I've never had a puncture. That's one thing I haven't had. Have you?
You're lucky. Yeah, I've had a few punctures. Absolute nightmare. Yeah. But I think if you know how to fix a puncture, then it alleviates part of the stress of dealing with a puncture. So I would
have the kit on you for it.
And know how to use it. I'm not saying I'm an expert at all, because I'm really not, but I think I could just about do one now. But again, if that scares you, well then control it and be prepared for it and know what to do. Evie, what about Sarah Marsden says, how do you stop the little voices in your head, the little demons creeping in on the run in like a 70.3 or an Ironman, which is saying you can't do it, just have a walk?
Oh, hey, listen, they creep in a 5K as well and a 10K. I remember last year at the Worlds, I was doing the 10K and I got that voice saying, you could stop. And you know what I've done? I do then? I go, okay, now I accept it. So you almost invite the thought, oh, great, yeah, here you are. And then you hit it with well, I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to run for another 30 seconds. Break it right down, because it's really effective. It helps you alleviate that sense of panic about, oh gosh, I've got all this distance to go, particularly in distance race like a 70.3 or an Ironman. It helps you, if you break it right down, have those very, very small steps, it just alleviates that anxiety. So accept the voice and then have another thought ready for it coming in saying, okay, well, that's fine. I could walk, but I could also run for another 30 seconds, and I'm going to. And before the event, write a little checklist of, I call them if-then strategies. So on one side, you put all the ifs. If I start to get that voice in my head, and on the other side, you have a corresponding response for it, then I will accept it, not fear it, and then hit it with, the little angel voice that says, yeah, I could walk, but no, I'm going to run for another 30 seconds or a minute. Stuff you. That can help, I think. And visualizing is really useful visualizing a really good training run, a long run that you did, perhaps where you had similar thoughts and you overcame them. Visualize the end of the race. That's a really powerful one where you can hear the people cheering. You know that sense of achievement's coming, and you've got people there who are supporting you, ready for you, cheering for you, ready to hug them. See their faces, see that medal, and break it right down. I think try and keep that pressure off you.
I'm welling up already, Evie, at the thought of at the finish line image. That's a very, very strong image.
Yeah, it is hard, particularly in longer races. It's so prominent because it's such a long way away. So I think breaking the race down, even if you don't have the voice in your head, just to help you stay motivated and achieve and always feel like you're progressing, it's important to have those really small process goals. That's why we recommend them.
And a quick word from our sponsors, foodcell.co.uk. Really clever invention this, the next generation of top tube nutritional carrier for your bike. So if you've ever tried to get stuff into or out of one of those bento boxes with a zip, you'll know it ain't easy when you're riding along. Foodcell solves that problem by having a little slider on the top that you can open with one finger. You slide it back, you can get your gel or your flapjack out, you can slide it closed again with one finger as you're riding along. I've used one of these and I think it's a fantastic solution to the problem of trying to get at food as you're riding, basically. The little box is waterproof, so your stuff doesn't get wet if it rains on race day, and who knows, racing in the UK, it might just do that. And the really cool thing about it is it's also been designed to be aerodynamic as well. So it's been tested in one of those computational computers that models aerodynamics to actually improve the aerodynamics of some of the tri bikes that are out there. So really cool solution. Check it out over at foodcell.co.uk. And if you buy up until noon on the 1st of May 2019, you can go into a free draw for a free entry into the Outlaw Nottingham full distance race. You've got to check the box at checkout, and you've just got to read the terms and conditions because there's some of those legal terms and conditions there as well. You can use the code FREEPOST for free delivery worldwide. Check it out at foodcell.co.uk.
Post-race, Peter Bennett says, no matter how good my race, the post-race blues are so real. What are the best ways to stop the low feeling after the massive highs of racing and finishing an event?
Yeah, this is a good one, and I like this one, Peter. Thank you for your question. I think self-compassion. Look up some information on self-compassion, and because I think in sport it's well evidenced to help athletes feel like they're coping well with what's happening. So I would, when you're reflecting on the race, think about what went well and think about what didn't go well. Even in an event that, it all went well, but you feel quite deflated, just reflect on the race and pick out some points that you really enjoyed and you felt really happy about. And then pick out some things that actually you recognize you might want to learn a little bit more about or develop. And then find another race or have another goal, whether it be a different way of training, trying a different coach, trying a different nutrition product, focusing on perhaps if you're a runner and you haven't done much strength and conditioning, think about maybe focusing on your strength and conditioning a bit more in your next training block. So always having something in the pipeline to work towards can help you. But I think not judging those feelings as either positive or negative, having that self-compassion, which is really appraising the experience objectively without judging it. So you're feeling really low. That's okay. It's natural. You've just had a huge build up towards this event and it's gone, and it is sad. It's also really exciting because you've achieved what you set out to. It's given you a huge sense of achievement. Talk to the people that shared your journey with you, family, friends, and relish that achievement with them, and accept that, everything that you work towards passes and there'll be something else. It's a hard one. And I think for big events, or for events that are really meaningful, where you're raising money for a charity, or you've lost someone close to your heart, and you're running for a cancer charity or similar, it can be quite moving. And yeah, I'm pleased Peter raised that question, because a lot of people underestimate that stage of a race. It's not over when it finishes. It's over when you've processed it and you've reflected on it and you're able to appreciate it and smell the roses. Smell the roses.
I think it's that. I think part of it is you just feel like there's a massive hole in your life, because I think it's very common with big events like your first marathon or your first sort of Ironman, because it might be something which, when you hit that enter button, you're like, I don't even know if I can do it.
No.
And so it is just such a huge, you dedicate so much of your life to the training and to sort of getting there and to getting to that finish line, and then suddenly you're not back in the pool on a Monday morning, or going to spin on a Wednesday, or going to your track session on a Thursday, and you're just like, now what?
Yeah, it's a hole. That's a good way of looking at it. It's an emptiness. It can be. And again, linking it back to what matters to you in life. Think about why you did it in the first place. That helps you keep a fairly healthy perspective of it as well. Because when you're in the midst of training, you can become consumed by it. And it's really important to keep it in perspective and realize that this isn't giving me life and joy. This is part of my life and joy, but I have that regardless of this training and this race. This is something I'm choosing to do because of this, or this. And it links back to what matters to me in life, which is this, and this. Therefore, when it finishes, I'll feel a sense of achievement and joy and acceptance of its completion. And then again, when you're ready, think of something else to work towards. And it doesn't have to be a race. It could be changing your training routine or your approach to a particular aspect of your sport. One client was working towards completing an Ironman, and Helen, how time consuming that is. And I think it took 18 months of training, or 18 months of focusing on this particular new lifestyle. And when he completed the Ironman, which he did do, he then, because we talked about preparing for that emptiness, and I think that's a big part of it. This is a really good topic, because my telling people that this is a normal part of the stage of the race, of your training and of your sport. It's a normal part to go through, and try not to fear it. But the more aware you are of it happening, the more you'll understand it and be able to work through it when it happens. And when he went through that period of anticlimax, gosh, it's over now, and also everyone around him, he felt very lonely, because everyone around him hadn't had that experience, and it was life-changing for him completely. He felt isolated, even with his family. So the first thing he did, talk to his family, and he then decided to take up a challenge with someone else, with one of his kids, and that just gave him a very different, another experience to work towards, but in a very different way. Felt more of a team project, and that worked for him. So yeah, it's a common thing, and it can happen after a 5K if someone's new to running, and they've done a moonwalk or a run, and you can't ever. It's not really relevant, the distance of the event or the size of it. It's all personal, but it's very relevant to each individual, I think. So yeah, and reward yourself. Go on, go out, have a beer, have a curry, or go on a holiday, or go into work and talk about it. Feel proud. That can help you carry on that sense of achievement for sure.
Tom Brunt asked, how do you not let missing one training session affect your whole week?
Look at your approach to your training schedule. Is there flexibility in it? It's really important to have flexibility and windows around the sessions that you do every week. And also think about your approach to recovery. So just what is your approach to recovery? Do you have a day where you recover? I'm not even going to call it rest, because the last few top athletes I've spoken to, elites, have all said to me the success behind their consistent top performance at the moment comes down to their approach of recovery. And what that, instead of seeing a day where they're not doing a high intense session as taking it easy, they're looking at it as recovery, and they're looking at recovery as the key day in their training that week. So have a think about it, and think about something you can do, a bit of foam rolling or a bit of stretching, or, that session isn't going to make or break your result.
The other questions which I wanted to touch on before we finish is more about, we've had something from Nick Schnell. Someone else had something similar. Yes, Wayne Threlfall. And so they both touched on, how do you stop seeing yourself as the person you were? So for people that didn't come from, or that came from a less than athletic background. So how do you stop seeing yourself as that person compared to the person that you maybe are now, having done all this training and sort of suddenly, I don't know, triathlon is very important in your life?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and it's a tricky one to answer, to give you some mental tips for. I think that one's much more of an individual one-to-one discussion I'd need to have with both gentlemen. It's interesting, how do you stop seeing yourself? Is that really what they want to know? Is it how do you stop feeling like you are that person back then? And it's all down to your self-perception, obviously. I think if you feel as though you weren't, before you got into your sport, that you weren't particularly fit or confident, or because I'm wondering, is that a negative? Did they not like that person they were? And is that having a detrimental effect on who they are now? Is it the fact that they didn't feel confident back then and now they do because they're obviously fitter, and they don't actually feel fitter because they're still seeing themselves as that unfit person back then? Again, Helen, I think one really simple trick is to keep a training diary, because it just provides the evidence, and it doesn't have to be structured right in that diary every single day. But keep a journal, keep notes on how you're feeling and what you're doing with your training and how you're progressing, because that is the evidence for the change that change that you've gone through. And if you reflect on it and read through it, it will reinforce the fact that, you know what, I was that person back then, but when I look in the mirror now, I'm still me. I'm just doing something different. I'm training, I'm developing some skills, I'm developing some fitness physically and mentally, and I'm proud of that. So the way to do that is to build your self-confidence, and to do that, look at the evidence of your training. So keeping a diary, I think, is a good one. And again, being compassionate with yourself, being objective. So looking back and going, you know what, okay, I was this, and this back then, and not judging that. Just be rational, be objective, and when you have thoughts and feelings that pop up about who you are now and who you were back then, try not to judge them. Simply state them, and these are the things that I'm feeling and thinking, and then write down a reflection of that. So you can say to yourself, well, I didn't feel very confident back then. This is an example, by the way. I'm plucking it out of thin air. I didn't feel great. I always felt like I was underachieving. But rationalize it. I was working a lot. I didn't spend much time on myself physically. I didn't dedicate much time to developing my fitness, and therefore I felt like I wasn't valuing myself in the way that I could. I wasn't reaching my potential. When you rationalize it like that and you take the judgment out of those thoughts and feelings, it's a much more positive way, and it's correlated positively to success in sport. Self-compassion is really well researched, and it's much more effective in terms of building success and building motivation and building a sense of achievement and progress as an athlete than being angry and self-critical. So it's more try to take the judgment out of how you saw yourself, write it down, be objective about it, and also where you are now. And now I've dedicated more time to my fitness. I'm feeling a greater sense of self-worth because I am dedicating my time to being fit. I'm linking it back to wanting to be a good example for my children, for myself, to fulfill my potential. Write it down, be objective, and also have a look at that training diary, because you can't deny that evidence, I think. But it's a hard one. It is a hard one.
Evie, that is so much good information over the past, 30-40 minutes. If anyone wants to find out a little bit more about you, or they want to pick up on any of this stuff that we've touched on very briefly, what's the best way to find out more?
My website is my name, my consultancy, evieserventi.com. You could find me online, and you could email me or call me at Facebook. Try to be active.
So much useful information there from Evie. Rob, do you tend to get nervous before a race?
No, if I'm honest, but that's for different reasons. I tend to do, when I do racing these days, I go along and do events for fun rather than to try and, lay out a performance. Yeah.
Okay,
but I can
let's
absolutely relate to, back in the day when I was really racing and trying to do as well as I possibly can. The thing that I always found interesting was that the best quote I ever found on this was the Muhammad Ali one, which was like, everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the face. And I think that relates to racing, because your mind can kind of go into a spasm when things aren't going your way, or even, you've got a plan to stick to a certain percentage of your threshold on the bike, and you just can't hold yourself back because you get so excited. It's like there's an inner teenager within you who's just going, yeah, whatever, let's just ride really hard. So there's definitely the elements of it, yeah.
Even last week at Wilmslow Half, I felt pretty nervous before that, because I knew I wanted to get, near-ish to 130, but I wasn't sure if I was capable of it. And for me, and I mentioned in that interview with Evie, it is definitely the sort of a fear of failure thing. But anyway, one thing that Evie did say was the breathing exercise that you can do, and we've put this in the show notes, and basically it's just sort of getting that breathing under control. And so it's a case of inhaling through the nose and counting it up to 4, and then you exhale through the mouth and you count up to 4, and then you relax on different things. So you sort of repeat this breathing in and out, but then the next time you do it, maybe you focus on your relaxing your toes. And so, it's a really good tip that she's put there. So we have put a link to that breathing exercise in the show notes. So if you want to find out more, you can head over to the website and you'll find them there, or in iTunes or whatever.
Good stuff. All right, everyone. Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of today's show. We hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope you've learned stuff from it as well. As always, you've been listening to the Oxygen Addict Triathlon podcast. A big thanks and shout out again to our sponsors, foodcell.co.uk, precisionhydration.com, and wearetribe.co. And until next week, you've been listening to the Oxygen Addict Triathlon podcast. I'm Coach Rob Wilby.
I'm Helen Murray.
Have a great, safe training and racing week, everybody, and we'll speak to you all again soon. Cheers. See ya.